And here we are. Hello, everybody. It's Mary
Hello,
Barbara
everybody.
Hanna and
And
Ann
Frost.
Frost.
Yep.
That's right.
Go.
This is the Frost Advisory going live on our usual Thursday at 12:30. So great to see everybody. And first of all, we want to thank everyone that tunes in. We don't see everybody right away. I know that many people actually view our videos sometime after the live event, which is totally great. We're always looking forward to your feedback. Any questions you want to ask us, you can always post in the comments, send us an email, post on our page. That's all great. We would love it if you would like and follow our page. Tell your friends about us. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you with any kind of presentation skills that you're working on. So as have said in the past, this presentation might not necessarily be a training or a workshop. You might be a salesperson presenting to a new client. You might be someone in the design department pitching a new idea to your marketing team. Any kind of presentations where you have to stand up and sell an idea. Those are the kinds of things that we can help you with. Because really, Ann and I know that a lot of what we do is about changing people's minds. Many people, especially adult learners, come into the room with some set ideas of how they think it is or how they think it should be. And many times we're trying to pry open those minds and get some air in there, get some sunlight in there, get some new ideas in there. And that's what selling is about. Ann and I aren't selling anything at the moment, but we are introducing lots of ways for you to get a glimpse into what we do and hopefully giving you some great tips to take back to work even this afternoon or consider over the weekend, if you will.
Yes.
So
And all your spare time.
that's right, in all your spare COVID-19 time. So the Frost Advisory, hot, cool advice on hot topics for stellar presentations.
There you go.
There it is.
Where are you done?
Which leads me to our today's presentation, which is phenomenal. Of course, I get the inside scoop as I get to see this. So it is Ann. It's all Ann today. I'm just playing the host, and I will tell you when if you've ever been through a training with me in the last 18 months, you've already heard this story. And of course, Ann already knows the story now too. But when I first came to Parkersburg and I started working with the group or the team over at West Virginia University, Parkersburg, uh, I was brought on to work with a group that was going to do this leadership training for our local hospital. And I was a little intimidated. I had just had surgery. I was recuperating from surgery and I went to our first team meeting. I think I was still using a cane back then. And, eh, Ann was part of this team, but Ann's been part of that team for how many years? Ann, have you been part of West Virginia University?
Oh gosh, it's more than 10
Yeah.
years, probably.
So you have this established relationship. So you know what it's like to be the new guy, the new girl walking into a room where people already know each other. It can be a little intimidating. As I said, physically, I was still using a cane, so not at feeling my top best health wise. And anyway, so we were figuring out who was going to do what and who was going to do this and this and this, and we were figuring out schedules and who would do what trainings, and that gets settled. But I already feel, like I said, intimidated because Ann is very good professional friends with several of the people in the room already. So time goes by, and I think Ann and I are going to either do something together. I can't remember how this worked out, but I get a copy of Ann's one of the PowerPoint presentations that Ann is going to do. And I immediately recognize, not that I ever thought I was great at PowerPoint, but I can see the difference would be my level was kindergarten and Ann's level is like doctorate, PhD. And when you see what you're about to see, you'll see why.
Oh my
And
God, no pressure.
no pressure. And when I saw that, I had a choice. I could have just felt jealous and controversial and confrontational and not done anything about it and just gone home and played the victim. But I would say, very nicely, proud of myself. I just saw a real opportunity to forge a relationship with Anne over improving my PowerPoint presentation skills and as a testament to the kind of person Anne is. So when I reached out to her and I said, wow, your PowerPoints are pretty phenomenal and mine suck. Would you ever be interested in sitting down with me for an hour or two and just giving me some pointers? And because Anne is the phenomenal person she is, she said yes. And we met at Panera, and our friendship has blossomed ever since. And here we are. Who would have thought 2 years later into the Frost Advisory? But that was really a great learning opportunity for me, a great moment to, when we think about the differentiators, authenticity, Ann and I being authentic with each other, I really needed help. And so I had to be vulnerable and reach out and say, gosh, I can see you're great at this and I'm terrible. Anne could have been like, yeah, well, too bad for you, sister. But she wasn't. She was so kind and generous. So her authenticity, bringing out the best in others, giving Anne the opportunity to be a great instructor and to practice being a follower, being a student for myself. But and Anne bringing out the best in me by encouraging me to show her, like she actually gave me little homework, okay, now you have to go do this presentation. So you put it together, send it to me, and then I'll let you know what I think, and giving me some advice on that. And then being open to feedback, for both of us, and me again, being able to show her my PowerPoints and cringing in the corner. But aren't all talented in all aspects. We really, and this is why Ann and I make a great team, because we are both open to feedback. We are both able to be honest with each other and open and vulnerable and trust, and building that relationship as we talk about every time. So
And
as I
wait a minute,
keep,
wait.
okay.
So, and just, I don't know, one of my greatest moments being the teacher to my student was the content we put together, the series of content, and you sent me slides of I forgot what the exact topic was, but you sent a PowerPoint to me, and your comment in the message was, I know you'll change all of this stuff, and that's okay, something to that effect. And I rolled through that presentation, and I don't think I changed a thing.
Woo!
And it's like,
A plus.
Student has become the teacher. So that warmed my heart. It's like,
Well,
yes,
thank you. Thank you for that.
think about it, even in training, it's like when you make that connection with someone and they get it and they take what you share and put it to work and can see a difference.
Yes.
It's like, that's the greatest thing. So not only does it happen in friendships, working relationships, but when it happens on that training battlefield, it's amazing.
And it's part of why we do what we do for a living. I mean, it's part of the satisfaction that I get as a trainer, as an educator, is to, as we call it, the light bulb moment, the aha moment, when you have connected with somebody in such a way that they actually get it and can now go forth and apply it.
Yeah,
And that's
what
really,
happened. That's exactly what happened with that. So
well, and I thank you, because, taking PowerPoint lessons can be very expensive, but you were very kind. Anyway, so what you're about to witness, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to Ann. This is a stellar presentation on stellar presentations by Ann. So now, Ann, I'm going to share my screen, right? Or are you going to share your screen?
I'll share my screen.
All right, well, let me make sure that I've got that
Yeah.
organized for you so that you're set to go and you're on.
Okay, so I don't share my screen. Here we go. I want to share screen. And bear with,
it doesn't matter. I feel like no matter how much we prepare, no matter how many times we practice, when it comes to this moment, dun, dun, dun. Well, just a reminder, as Ann's getting ready, that we are available for consultation on what not to do and what to do. Are you ready?
No, I'm getting there. I had to find. Okay, this should be it. Open.
Because I'm also ready, so I can do it if you need.
Oh, you've got it?
No, but there you are. Start screen sharing.
Am I?
There it is.
Okay.
You got it.
I got it. So let me get this in presentation mode. Okay, well, we'll try it this way. So welcome everyone. You are here on a good day, because I did this presentation a few years ago and it was 121 slides. So I've narrowed it down in a major way, because as I went through, I wanted to just pull out what I thought were the not only the most helpful, but the things that you could do immediately. So I've got it narrowed down to 2 or 3 sections. So on with the show. The first thing I want to mention to everybody is this data was collected pre-COVID. So during pre-COVID, there have been or 30 million presentations are done each day. There are 300 million PowerPoint users in the world. And right at this very moment, there are more than 1 million, probably way more now with COVID, but more than 1 million presentations going on at this very moment. Now, take it as good news or bad news, whichever you will. But the really bad news is if all of that's going on, there's probably at least 50% of the participants are losing consciousness as we speak. Because some folks just kind of get carried away with, and I did. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. When my son first showed me how to do a PowerPoint presentation, it was like, I'm going to use all the colors and all the fonts and every bit of animation I can think of. And that worked well for me because I love arts and crafts, but it bored the living daylights and even worse, confused a lot of the people that made up that audience. So over time, I have come to learn, let's just keep it simple. What can we do we may never solve the problem of this guy on the ground, unconscious, but we can address some of those symptoms. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And sort of, if you had to put it under an umbrella, it's KISS. Let's just keep it as simple as we can. So moving forward with that, ask yourself 3 questions when you are getting ready to create that PowerPoint presentation. You need to ask yourself 3 questions. Why aren't they animating? Well, this is another challenge.
I have found when I do that, I know
Yeah,
that you hit the arrow to make it big.
yeah,
Oh, there you go. Or you just clicked on the thing.
I did. But how do you?
Because presentation mode, I think, is down in the lower right corner. It's not that bar across the bottom, but
Right.
it's actually
Okay.
down in the lower right corner. But yeah, it's not that bar. It's
Oh, this will
doesn't
be
matter.
okay. Hold on 1 second then. Talk amongst yourself. Mary Barbara, I'm
Okay,
going to let you.
I sure can. So, as I'm saying, even though you may watch this at a later date, we are checking our page every day. Feel free to ask us any questions about PowerPoint, how to use the fonts, something more specific. If you have a deck that you would like Anne to review, she can, for a cost, she did it free for me, but that's because we're coworkers and I think I brought her lunch that day. But for, if you would like any kind of consultation, our first 30 minutes is free. But if you have a PowerPoint deck that you would actually like Anne to look at and go over with you, she is available. You can reach out to her through the Frost Advisory. We have our website, Learn, Grow, Succeed Training and Coaching, LGST andc.com, Learn, Grow, Succeed, Training and Coaching.com. You can reach us over there. Also, you can see a list of not all the trainings, but a sampling of the trainings and workshops that were available to put together. Now, sometimes we do the writing and other people deliver. Other times we put it together and deliver. We also do train the trainer. So we're really here, and especially now in these COVID-19 times, people are looking for more online remote training, virtual learning. Ann and I have been in this training world for 30 years at least combined, but also have a great deal of experience with training online, doing online trainings. I've done the training where you stand in the room and you're going to offices all over the United States, and I'm standing one place but talking to people remote locations. So there's a lot to be said for the experience that we've got and what we can help you do with your company.
Can you
How's it
see
go?
this? Can you
How's it?
see this now?
What I see is Zoom. It's your Zoom screen.
Oh, oh,
Oh
okay.
no, little.
Let me share the screen again.
Okay.
I had it up and I thought that was it.
Yeah,
So,
I had the same thing. Like what I'm seeing on my screen is different than what you're seeing on your screen. So
okay.
now it's just back to the two of us. The two of us. So and again, Ann and I there
Can
we
you,
go.
there we
That's
go.
it. You got it.
All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
That's
If
right.
I do PowerPoint, I just can't do Zoom and PowerPoint, obviously, at the
There's a
same
lot going
time.
on.
So old dog is going to learn a new trick today. So back to answering those three questions. Very simple. Um, oh, let's not go all the way back. Okay. What is your purpose? Remember last week when Mary Barbara was talking about crafting your objectives so you can then develop your content? That's going to lend itself to identifying what your real purpose is for this training. You have your objectives and then what's supposed to happen at the end of this training. In my head, every time there's a training, there's an expectation that there's going to be a change at the end, large or small, company-wide, just for you, you know. So there's going to be that expectation that something is going to be different at the end of this training. What is that? So what is your purpose? Who is your audience? Who are the people that's going to be in the room? Have you had a chance to learn more about who your audience members are? Maybe what some of their burning issues are. I spoke a little bit about that maybe the week before last as a way to get to know, you know, what the real needs and issues are of the people in the room. And then what action? What do you want them to do? What is the call to action at the end of this training? So start with those three simple questions, and that will provide sort of the overarching structure to what needs to go into this presentation.
Can I ask a question? Can you go back for 1 second there, Anne?
Yep.
Actually, I know you're trying to go forward, but even back one more.
Okay.
Because now as a PowerPoint person,
Yeah.
this is where, now this is what I'm telling the audience, this is where you see Anne's great skill set. You know, so we're laughing about death by PowerPoint, but her imagination takes her someplace I don't know how to get to. And then she even fixes, I don't know if you put that little PowerPoint on his laptop.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk, thanks for mentioning that. We'll talk about that momentarily.
Okay.
I've gone to, instead of, I used to load it up with a lot of different pictures. I used to have way too many words on the slide. My philosophy now is if I could get the one picture that sort of grabs folks' attention, yes, you're looking at it, and oh, very good, you picked up that I put the PowerPoint on his laptop, and that kind of makes that connection between what I'm going to say and the sort of theme of the conversation, which is death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And it's a chuckle. I was voted most humorous in my senior class, and sometimes I use humor too much. But it's like, you know what? We're all going to be in this room for 4 hours. Let's lighten up. It doesn't mean that I don't take the subject matter seriously. I do, but I want to do it with a light touch.
Absolutely. And, you know, as we have said, even as trainers, especially if you're delivering the same content 6 times, which we've been doing for this leadership cohort at the hospital, we get a different group twice a week, but that's adding up to 2, 4, 6 times that we're doing the training. You have to stay sane yourself. And many times, if you've gotten comfortable with the material, it's easy to slide into, well, that's not as important. And don't worry about this piece. And yeah, who cares about that? You know, you don't want to slide into whatever that word would be, boring for yourself. So we do entertain ourselves a little bit. There has to be something for us to stay mentally engaged and having fun. Okay. So anyway, as we're going through, I kind of want there to be, you know, I'm thinking for the audience, there's 2 ways to look at what she's talking about, what Anne's talking about.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So we're seeing the presentation, but then, you know, taking a moment and peeling off that layer and actually looking at the slide and what makes this a good slide. You know, why would you want to not have a ton of words on here? And, you know, how did you focus? And that's all. I'm just saying, I don't know, because I just think this the minute I saw this, of course, I started laughing when I looked at it before our Facebook Live today.
And poor guy's got on white socks too. It's like, what is up with that? I don't get it.
Oh man, nobody told him he was going to be laying down.
I know.
This model got hired and he didn't know he'd lay down. So again, you know, tell us a little bit about this slide. 3 questions to answer. So, you know, in this case, you used a feature where you can
Yeah,
automatically have
I
one,
keyed
two,
in,
three pop up.
yeah, I keyed in the purpose, audience, and action as text. And then over top of that, if you were to look at it out of presentation, I just put sort of blocks of white
Oh,
over
okay.
each word so that when I click, it dissolves away and reveals.
Gotcha.
Now, why I thought that was a fun thing to do, I'm not sure, but
Well, but the
it is.
purpose of doing that is so that you control, because a well-known fact, I guess I would say, is that people will read before they listen.
Right,
So they're
right.
reading what's on the screen. So if you already have purpose, audience, and action listed, they're 3 steps ahead of you. They've already read
Exactly.
those things and their minds are someplace else. So you control what they're thinking, essentially.
So you
That
just
old
hit on
mind control.
two things that I enjoy, being in control, and I don't want people to take my punchline.
Right.
So I want to keep things hidden. Now the challenge is when you get ready, if and we're not going to talk so much about this today, but I'm glad you mentioned it. Like I'm sure everyone knows, from your PowerPoint come your handouts.
Yes.
So when I create this, that's got the little white blocks over top of the language, the handout will look like this. It won't have the 3 responses.
Interesting.
So you have a choice to make as the facilitator for this training. You can tell folks, now this isn't in your notes, so write this down on your handout, or you go in when you get ready to create your handouts and you take off the little white boxes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then,
there's something to be said for having people write it down as part of the moving information
yes,
from short-term memory to long-term memory.
yeah,
So, all
yeah.
right, I promise I won't bother you on every
No,
single
no,
slide,
no, 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 that's
but that's
good.
what I want the audience to do is see this with 2 different purposes. One
That's
just as the
excellent.
audience and one as
Yeah,
what is the slide technically about.
yes,
Yeah.
I love it.
I want a
And
cute baby.
I know. And so, I mean, aren't you drawn in? That's another way to look at when you're searching for
Oh,
pictures, is what's going to have a connection with your audience. This particular slide, it was the audience was comprised of men and women, and they were of a certain age range. So I knew there were going to be some grandparents in the room, maybe some young parents in the room.
okay.
So that's the reason I chose the child. For another group, maybe if it's all men that work in a factory, a plant environment, maybe I would have chosen, I probably would have chosen a different picture.
Yeah.
So that's another reason it's helpful to know who's going to be in the room, so that when you're choosing your pictures, you're better able to make those connections with folks and draw them in. So now I have your attention with this adorable baby. And we've all heard that since, the beginning of time, is don't talk to strangers. So where I'm going with this is to reinforce the need to get to know your audience. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I'll just tell you, I'll give you some frontline experience, some things that I do. I may have mentioned some of these things before. I always try to meet with whoever's hired me, who's ever initiated the call to the college. Then I will go out and have a conversation, at least one, sometimes 2. And there's been occasions where there's been 3 conversations to try to drill down. For example, one call I got, well, we've got this big problem with conflict resolution. It's like, well, okay, I can do that, no problem. Let's have that conversation. And after the second meeting, I figured out, after listening to, what was going on, what were some of the impacts and implications of not being able to resolve conflict. It really came down to effective communication was the real issue. It was more than just conflict resolution. So having a sense of the real issue is important, and who that issue is impacting, which to me, that's going to be the people in the room, or people that represent the majority of those people. Do they have decision-making control? Can they do something about it? Mary Barbara and I, just before we started today, doing a training for people on a supervisory level I had the conversation. I knew what the objectives were, was ready to go, had my material, got into the room, went through the burning issues section, and it's like crickets out there. And well, is there more than what's, no, this is what we need to talk about, but it's got nothing to do with the content today. We don't need this. We need what is on the burning issue list.
Yeah.
So that was a real eye opener. So I'm going to do a better job or a deeper dive into, because I think what it came down to was they did not have control over making some changes that were going to be required based on the material I was presenting.
Yeah.
And so that's a need to know on your part as a trainer.
Yeah.
Okay, after it's over, here's the expectations. Are they going to be able to do anything about it?
Right. Yeah, because that really also impacts how much they're willing to participate in the training. You know, a lot of those people
share or be engaged.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, those
Yeah.
people know the politics of where they're working.
Yes.
And many times, as Ann and I've already said, this training is just a box that's getting checked.
Yeah.
Nobody actually even expects anything to change, but we have to do the, go to the training and sit here like good little people, and then they're going to check a box, and then nothing is going to change.
Right.
And if you are truly a trainer at heart, truly a teacher, that should frighten you and frustrate you to no end, because you are doing a lot of work. Exactly. You're doing a lot of work. So you're trying to find the way to help these people make changes in a place that doesn't want to change. And the best you can do, the best anybody can do, is change themselves. Everything starts with how you do it. But anyway.
Right.
Ann and I could talk all day.
Oh, yes, we can. So getting to know your audience, you're meeting with the person that called you in. The one thing I've started doing, or the next thing I've started doing over the last several years that's had a tremendous impact is actually spending several hours on site. Mm-hmm. And of course that's, when it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not always possible to do that. But if you can shadow some folks or just spend some time with them to get a sense of what their day is like. And I tell you, I did get a little emotional. This one particular company, I went and spent a half a day, and I got the tour of the plant, walked through, chatted with folks, along the line, and was able to not be an interruption to what they were doing, but just try to get a sense of, what do you have to deal with every day, and how does this topic, I think it was effective communication, how is knowing more about effective communication going to help you do a better job? So those are the answers I was looking for as I was walking around the plant. So I did that. All right. And so now fast forward, I'm getting ready to deliver the training to this team of people. And I had a couple of people came up to me during the break and said, "We were so surprised to see you on the plant floor." It's like, "Oh, really? I hope I didn't mess anything up." They said, "No, it just made a big difference. We've never had a trainer do that before. And it told us that you really want to make a difference and really want to help us work through whatever it is we have to work through." And it's like, how simple was that?
Exactly.
How simple was that?
So simple.
So not only are you learning more about the organization and the people that are going to be in the room, you're sending a message to folks. I want to do a good job. I want to give you the content that you need in order, to be more successful or more high-performing team, whatever that case may be. But it's about the relationship. They knew before they walked in the door, they had a sense of who I was as a person.
Yeah.
Just saying. So if you can do that, I highly recommend it. If you can't, there are other ways to kind of get a sense, get the information you need. I've done, when time allows, I'll do a pre-survey of folks. Mm-hmm. Let's say, for example, the issue is conflict resolution. I shared with you all in a previous session this tool called a plus delta. And I will have a little statement at the top, in terms of how you all resolve conflict at your location or as a team. And then what's working well, that's the plus. What could you do differently to be more successful? That's the delta. So I have anybody that's going to be in the room, they have received this survey, and then it comes back to me, and I compile the data all into one document so that they can see, whoa, this is a bigger issue than we thought.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'm not alone. Other people feel the same way that I do. And then we just use that as a tool and a resource throughout the training when it comes to problem solving or goal setting or prioritizing. So, but it gives you a chance to get to know who the people are ahead of that first training session.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that, again, if it's possible and appropriate for you to do that. All right, so moving on, let's move on to, we're going to talk a little bit about structure. All presentations need structure, right? I hear a collective yes.
Yes, Anne.
Yes, and so the challenge then becomes, you know, how can we simplify that? Remember, that's the one thing we can do to revive people in the room, is just to keep it simple. So what can we do? Well, here's a suggestion. The first thing you can do is start out, as you're organizing your content, start out with that attention getting opening, the chalk outline of the poor deceased who's attending the PowerPoint presentation. That was my attempt at an attention getting opening. Yes, we have to have the body and supporting information. I think supporting is a key word here. I could tell you all that I could tell you, but if I don't have examples and situations, maybe even a little research to back it up, then you may or may not likely perceive me as a credible source, take my information and go do something with it. So I have to have the bulk of the content, but I have to have ways to support, emphasize, and underscore that it's legit, right? And then as you get ready to close up, you need to leave them with something memorable that they'll take away. It's like, oh, yes, I get it. I know the first thing I'm going to do when I get back. So just to kind of give you a sense of the importance, all three of those areas are important. But the first, because the first, you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, right? You've got their attention, and now I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about today. And then you deliver that content, and then some people, you know, they're either on their phones or they may have taken a short nap during the body of your presentation. So now that conclusion or that ending is your last chance to wake them up and remind them what you talked about, and to give them that call to action about what you expect to happen when they get back to work. And this is just one way to structure your content. Another way, you may have heard of AIDA, AIDA. It's attention, generate some interest or desire for them to pay attention and take in, and then close with a call to action. So it's attention, interest, desire, and action. That would be the AIDA format. But there's all different kinds of structures. Just do what you feel comfortable with. Do what is the simplest for you that you think your audience is going to be able to follow along, and hopefully take away some really good nuggets.
I tried to figure out what
now
this was.
This relates to organization of your material.
Oh.
So if I were to ask you, what do all these, what is this? What is this, a word? Is this like, are you getting confused right now, Mary Barbara? I mean, are you like, oh, I don't understand? And so maybe your confidence level's taking a dip. Maybe now it's like, well, this is a good time to check my messages or send out that text.
I will tell you that the competitive person in me is trying to figure out if this is an acronym and each letter stands for a word. And what I couldn't get the first part, but the last one was something about my Facebook. I laughed out loud, by the way.
Okay, you've got the last few. Okay, this is a tool that I recommend when I do effective communication. about organizing your content. So if we've got our structure and now we're trying to organize the content within the body of the presentation, which is better? To just get up and be a talking head and just spew it all out and hope that folks get it, or chunk it? That is a technical term, by the way, chunking your information into logical groups or compartments. So now look at it. Go, go. It's not going. It's not animating. There we go. So I was trying to represent chunking this information. So instead of that one long acronym, now you've got IRS. You know what that means.
Oh.
YMCA. I've been
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
IBM. Are they still in business? I don't know.
I don't know.
FBI. I know them. Fortunately, I have no experience with them. That's good. LOL, we know what that is. And by the way, BTW. So now it's like, it makes sense.
So also then, that's the top layer is the learning, but the bottom layer, the technical, about how you did these stripes, which you don't have to explain it to us, but just calling attention to the fact that you're calling our attention, you're dividing up all the acronyms. That's incredible.
Thank you. What I did was just, if you go into shapes in the top bar of PowerPoint, I just inserted rectangles. I made each rectangle a different color with a slight transparency to it so that when it went over top of the letters, you could still see the letters.
Yeah,
and then
it's incredible.
The animation is the same. It's peek in, PEEKIN, peek in, just two from the top, one from the bottom, and do it all at the same time.
This is, folks, this is why I'm telling you, if you need help with your PowerPoint presentation, you want somebody to look at it or to make it incredible, Anne Frost is the girl for you. This just in, Anne's amazing. Anyway.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be so much harder to live with after this is over.
Poor Jack.
I know. So that was just, let me really go back to that. And the other thing with chunking is not only does it help you organize the body of your presentation so that it's not so overwhelming, but it also gives, if you're chunking, you're talking, right? And then you're pausing. You're pausing to let folks ask questions, or you're pausing to let folks do an activity that reinforces what you've just spoken about, or you're pausing to let folks talk amongst themselves. You've given them, ask the question and said, turn to your partner and talk about this that relates to what you've just spoken about. So you're talking, reinforcing, and chunking enables you to do that because of the way you're dividing the body of your content. So another reason I like to chunk. And all throughout your presentation, you want to remind folks, you don't need to necessarily ask them the question, what do you want to remember, or what is important to remember? But you want to have that in your mind as you're putting the content together. So you're re-emphasizing maybe a major point throughout. You can be redundant, you can be repetitive. Redundant is saying the same thing, only in different words. Repetitive is you're just being verbatim. You want to do that in such a way that people aren't counting the number of times that you're saying a particular thing, but you just want to weave it in and out throughout the body, because that's maybe the underlying premise of why you are in that room today. Sometimes I'll even start off in that attention getting opening and say, there's one thing I want you to take away from today's conversation, and this is it. This is going to be the focus. So I just flat out tell them in the introduction that during that body, I'm weaving it in and out and giving them a chance to make a connection to, I see how that fits together now, or that makes sense. So weaving the what is it you want them to remember throughout your presentation. is important. And then how do you want them to feel about it? I want you to be excited that we're here today, that we're learning about PowerPoint, because then when it comes to actually doing it yourself, you won't be as anxious about it. You'll maybe, the first time I sat down to do a PowerPoint presentation, I was a nervous wreck because I didn't know enough about the technology. And I thought, well, I'm going to blow something up. I'll wipe off a hard drive, or there will be a catastrophe for sure. But it's, after I did it, it's like, okay, it's not as bad. I can do this. So how do you want folks to feel about the information that you're sharing? Excited, concerned, troubled, motivated. We all act, our behaviors come out of our emotions, right? So if you can generate a little bit of emotion about what it is you're talking about, so that people will be more inclined to implement that expected change at the end of the training. So how do you want them to feel? Again, weaving this throughout the conversation. And then what do you want them to do? That's your call to action. What are those expectations? Remind them of why they are here. This is why we were brought together. We need to have a conversation about communicating more effectively so that we can, and then make that change at the end. All three of those questions woven throughout your content. So now we come to a burning question. All right, I get it. I've got the structure. I know the content. I know how I want it organized. I can answer those three questions. What do I use? Well, I'm thinking use two things: what the content lends itself to and what you're most comfortable with. I think we mentioned this last week, right?
A little bit, yeah.
It's like, if you're going to deliver a presentation to 125 people and you've never done PowerPoint before, that's probably not the time to do PowerPoint. So I'm trying to think, okay, help me out here, Mary Barbara. Again, we were talking about this earlier. This training that I'm going to do, maybe next week, maybe the week after, it's changed. The content has changed such that the materials that I had ordered for this presentation are still valuable. They will be a good resource, but it's not going to fit the needs of the participants. So I was talking with Mary Barbara earlier about, okay, how should I do this training now? I don't want to do, with COVID, I don't want to do PowerPoint that much anymore. I can't do a lot of the group activities I was going to do or have done in the past. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of brainstorming with her about doing some worksheets and more individual work than group work and so on and so forth. So what essentially happened, I went from a full-blown PowerPoint to maybe just a couple of slides, and we're going to do worksheets because of the content has been changed, circumstances definitely changed, and the people in the room have probably changed too since the last time I did it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so you need to think about those factors as you're making that decision. And
I would also just add, sorry, that to remember, although there's probably some segment of our audience that would not know this, but there was a time when there was no PowerPoint, and we used overheads, or we just used the flip charts or the whiteboards or chalkboards or whatever to get our point across, where people printed things that they, diagrams and layouts and so forth, blueprints, to be able to share their ideas. So pictures do help people envision what it is you're talking about: a diagram, a chart, a flow sheet, what have you. So this is not to say don't put together a PowerPoint, but PowerPoint is not necessarily always the answer, or you may be trying to talk to people on the shop floor, and short of walking around with your laptop and showing a PowerPoint, you may have to be able to just hand them a sheet and do the training from the sheet, talking to them. So knowing your audience, knowing the purpose of what you're talking about, and then using the technology most appropriate for that situation.
Yeah, that was a good way to say that. That's most appropriate for the situation. So really like to give you all the idea that I thought of this myself, but I didn't. What does a good visual aid look like? She asked. It looks like a billboard on an interstate highway that people can read going by at 70 miles an hour. I know. Now think about that. How many billboards have you gone by and it's had the phone number and the address and the hours of operation and the font is smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, well, I totally missed that. So that's a good way to sort of summarize what you should be keeping in the back of your mind, no matter what kind of visual aids you're using, whiteboard, flip chart, PowerPoint. It needs to be large enough to get their attention, give them the gist of what you're talking about, and all that detail information, that's what goes in your handouts.
Also, back to this chart that we've been talking about, the know about chart.
Yeah.
If you know that you want to make a difference, you know that you're going to be meeting these people, for example, this leadership group over an 18-month period. So what goes on, you can't put, a million things on a slide and expect them to remember that. The best you're ever going to get is to know that, or to know about, or to know that you might get to know how. But that takes a lot more time. So keeping it at that level of what they're going to remember when they walk out of the room. If it's most important they remember a phone number, don't put that at the bottom in small print. That needs to be at the top in big font, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing to remember. This is what we want you to walk away with.
Right. So one of the secrets of using PowerPoint is knowing when not to use it. So little sage advice there from somebody who's walked into that trap. And a couple simple suggestions. The first is, if it doesn't enhance your message, reinforce the point you're trying to make, it doesn't belong on the slide. So sometimes that's a challenge for people like me that I want it all. I want it all on the slide. There's slides just are not big enough to contain what I want to put on it, but it's something that we need to keep in mind if we don't want to lose our audience and have them end up as a chalk outline.
It just occurred to me while you were saying that this software is called PowerPoint, meaning get to the point, not PowerPoints, right? Like
Didn't
it's
even think of
really
that.
get the power of making the point, and that's what the slide does, is emphasize the point of what we're talking about.
That's
so
very good.
Well, I've been using PowerPoint for 20 years and I just now realized that's what it was about. I don't know.
Slow but sure, Mary.
Took me a while.
Okay. Simple suggestion number 2. What I'm trying to convey here is, yes, it's a lot for some of us. It's a lot of fun. It's the arts and crafts of searching for just the right picture, for getting it positioned to have it do what you want it to do. But all of that is a waste of time if you don't have your content nailed, your outline nailed. So what I would suggest is to wait, get your objectives, draft your outline, send that outline to your contact person for review, get their input. Am I on target? Is this the direction you want to go? Have I covered all the things that you expect me to cover, so on and so forth. Get that back, revise it, redraft the outline, and then redraft it, whatever your process is to ensure that you've got the content nailed before you start doing the arts and crafts will actually save you a lot of time in the long run. And you can do this through PowerPoint. Some of us just like taking a pencil and a piece of paper, but there's that outline tab in PowerPoint where you can create your own outline, print it, send it, revise it, and so on and so forth. So, again, use whatever method you're most comfortable with and will help you be most effective with ensuring that the content is completely finished before you start to get arts and craftsy and start making decisions about things like fonts and colors and animation. Okay, what's wrong with this picture?
Everything?
Yes. The only thing that is close to being right is the sentence, "This helps to maintain your theme and balance your presentation." It's in a large enough font, in an appropriate contrasting color for this slide. I have a tendency, as you probably figured out, I like to use a black background and let things pop on the slide.
It's
So
actually, I know I'm always intersecting with, there's research that shows, but there actually is research that shows that it's easier for people to read with a dark background and light color rather
mhm.
than the white background with the dark color because it's jarring for physically jarring for the vision part of your brain. Just so you know, anybody out there that likes
So
a little
it's legit.
scientific, it is legit. It is
I like
legit.
it. So yeah, with the exception of that one sentence, everything else is kind of wrong. What I try to do is to pick two fonts. I'll have one for my title slide, which is what this represents, and then I'll have a different font for the actual text. For the title slide, I like to use a font that has, is it sans serif with a serif, which is what like that part is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, yeah, I don't have, this is more of a block. Oh, it's style, like a Verdana or is it Calibri? Calibri is another one of my favorites.
Calaberry or something.
There you go. Close enough.
I
So the
think
point,
the point of the serif when you have like the FONT, that serif, it's designed to help when you're reading. It's helped to design to keep your eyes moving. That's why it's got the beginning.
oh,
It's all that stuff. So that's the reason for the serif. And then sans serif is when they don't have the little tails on them, and it
okay.
looks more blocky. But that, my background is literacy, so now you're hearing a little bit of the literacy stuff
And
come
I
out that I
just
know
thought it
about.
was pretty.
It is
So
pretty. It is pretty. But the serif is designed to help your eyes
I
move,
did not know
to
that.
flow along. Yeah. Learn something new every day.
I did. So, try to stick to two fonts and uh, limit to, I don't like a lot of different colors in terms of, from the title to let's make every letter a different color or every line a different color. It's cute, but people start paying attention to, oh, wonder what color font she's going to use on the next slide. So it becomes a distraction is what's happening.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to point out on this slide is contrast. And this is what I'm trying to represent in this title piece. The white on the pale yellow is a very poor contrast. So you want to have something that's a little darker again, so it pops. People can distinguish,
Yeah, it's just easier to read.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
and that might be one of the underlying themes for a well-crafted PowerPoint is it's easy for folks to read, follow along, not get confused because all of your slides are well thought out in terms of the technical pieces such as this. What I'm trying to convey with this slide is sometimes it happens to me all the time. There's so much information that I want to share with everybody there, and I've only got 4 hours in which to do it. So I had past tense, the tendency to just load up my slides with text, just load up because they need to know all of this. What happens when that occurs is you become a talking head. Once you become a talking head, you might get a little monotonous to some people, boring to other people. You're treating it like a speech and maybe even a speech that you're reading off cue cards. So you want to avoid that, right? We talked earlier, a couple sessions ago, about connection, relationships, having people feel engaged. They're not engaged with talking heads. If it's just a speech you're reading off a cue card, which by the way, people hate it when you read your slides to them.
Yeah, right. Just leave me with a slide. I could have sat at my desk and done this.
Yeah, or just, send me the handouts. I could have avoided this. So to me, what you're doing with these great pictures, these bold colors, keeping things simple, is you're creating an opportunity for that connection and that relationship. You're using the slide, you as a trainer are using the slide as just a reminder.
That's right.
Okay, talking heads. It's not a speech. You're not reading it off cue cards. You got to keep people engaged. They'll remember the point that you're trying to make because they've got the visual image of these mannequin heads. That's everything that was in my notes. And all I needed was this picture to remind me of that. And I'm treating it as a conversation with people
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
out in the room. This is
Yeah.
this is the old me. Don't put too much stuff on your slides. Apparently, there's been research out there somewhere about what people like and don't like about PowerPoint presentations. This is the number 2 reason, putting too much on the slide. Now, in defense of all the engineers and technical folk out there, sometimes they just have to do this. If they're explaining a complicated process, they need to have a lot of stuff on the slide. So, you know, it's going to
That's engineers. They get a pass.
Yeah, they do get a pass. Because I'm married to one and gave birth to 2. So yeah, we're going to give them a pass. But it's just the nature of what it is they have to get done. Keep in mind, however, who's ever delivering this slide is probably an engineer, knows the situation of his folks in the audience, and that they're going to understand this and not lose consciousness like others, you know, might. So just an illustration of things not to do unless you're an engineer.
I also like this one.
Yeah, another reminder not to load up your slide with a lot of text, because people will lose consciousness after a certain point of time. So we have to think about, for each slide that we put into our presentation, 1 slide, 1 point. You're going to have 1 slide for every point that you're trying to make. You're not trying to jam in 50 ideas, separate, different ideas onto 1 slide.
And if you are, that tells you that you have not crafted your outline appropriately. You need to go back and rework your material, because if you're trying to fit a whole bunch of stuff onto 1 slide, you've not chunked it.
Or you don't know, or you haven't had a deep enough conversation with the person that called you in, because you don't, and that has happened to me where it's like, oh, I'm not sure if this is exactly what they want, so I'm going to throw it in just in case.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just in case they need it. Okay, so if everybody will please buckle their seatbelts as we transition to the next slide.
I got a big kick out of this slide, that's for sure.
So animation is a wonderful thing, and I will never forget where I was the first time I learned how to animate. I mean, it was.
No one is going to forget this slide.
I know. So we just have to be aware that, yes, we can animate, and we often do animate because we can. It's there. I mean, why would Bill Gates put it in this software if he didn't expect us to use it? But what happens? How many folks out there at this very point in time have heard a word I've said or have been watching the bouncing ball? I mean, come on.
Right. Everybody's watching that bouncing ball.
I know. So
you know what I would also say, Anne, is the amount of time it takes when you're doing, as Anne likes to call it, the arts and crafts of making a PowerPoint, all the time it takes to look and find the animation and the colors and the font changes. I mean, you might find that you're spending way too much energy
for sure
every slide.
I've had the family come up and surround me. Is dinner ever going to be ready?
An intervention.
Yes.
So really the reality is, you know, as much as you enjoy it, it doesn't, that's great. And you go right ahead, not you, Anne, personally, but I'm just mean our audience in general. But the reality is you might find yourself looking at the clock and then realize 45 minutes later, you're still on the same slide because you couldn't decide which color. Yeah, okay, Anne's going to go with hours. I'm going to go 45 minutes. So, you know, so watch it. You know, don't burn out on the amount of fun you can have doing this stuff, because it can be fun. It does have its place, but I think sometimes people, and when I say people, I mean me, get too caught up in colors and fonts and all the possibilities make it difficult. Yeah,
I know.
To settle on one.
Okay, so folks, just use animation. I don't want to cut you off cold turkey. Use it, but use it sparingly, because you don't want to do anything that's going to create a distraction for folks so that they're more focused on the fun thing or this other thing versus the content that you have put together and plan to share. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now what I'd like to share with you in this slide is the difference between clip art and a real picture, and let you decide, in your opinion, which is more effective. If we're talking about a grandmother and their grandchildren and, oh, kitty cat, oh my gosh, is your heart warmed yet? Or does this do a better job of conveying the same emotion, only stronger? So my point is, anytime you can use a real picture, this is actually a real picture, my mom and my kids and my nephew, it's conveying basically the same thing that the clip art is, but don't you feel a stronger emotion? Don't you get a, with the clip art, yeah, it's cute picture. With the,
It also feels very kid-like. Like cartoons are
yes.
for kids. If this was something for a small child, you could get away with a
Yeah.
cartoon clipping. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just, any time you can use a real photograph, use it versus clip art. In my notes, I made a comment that it's hard to get emotional around clip art. I'd like to color it. That's what I want to do. I like to color. So you want to choose which is more effective given your audience and the content that you are sharing with folks. All right, and then the last little, or second to last thing I want to share with you is to make sure you proofread those slides.
Yes.
Number one, there are people out there that look for mistakes and will call them out to you. I've had that happen.
Sure. Absolutely. We all have.
Yeah. And then there's the other occasion when the misspelling could be embarrassing in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had that happen, but I've seen it on TV. So it must be true. So just make sure you proofread your slides. I'll even, if I can find a willing person, I'll just send my PowerPoint to them and say, look, this is what I was tasked to do. This is the message I'm trying to send. Will you please look at this presentation and tell me if that's what you're getting from this? And oh, by the way, being open to giving and receiving constructive feedback. If there's any corrections or anything you think would add to this, or something I should take out that doesn't make sense, please feed that back to me. I would appreciate it. So if you can find a willing person to help you out with that, they'll be your friend for life. And so, folks, all good things must come to an end.
Ta-da.
And hopefully you've found a couple of things, at least two things out of today's conversation that can help you with your PowerPoint presentation. We talked about keeping things simple, about making sure that you identify your purpose, the audience, and what action it is you want them to take at the end of your presentation. I've given you a little bit of my experience from the front lines of training and facilitation. Keeping those visual aids to be the billboard that it needs to be, that you can read at 70 miles per hour and appropriate to your comfort level, what's going to help you remain authentic, what's going to help you bring out the best in folks. And the basic rule about PowerPoint is more is not better. Now that's hard for some of us to take in. So here's my call to action for you all. I want you from this point forward, when you are working on putting together a presentation, whether it includes PowerPoint or not, but think about those 4 leadership questions we talked about day one. What is it that you can do more of, less of, start doing, or stop doing to help your presentation, your facilitation, be even more effective so that you differentiate yourself from all others in the universe. Ta-da! So I will stop sharing.
Well, thank you, Anne. That was excellent. And as our audience knows, we typically stick to about a half hour, 45 minutes, but there was, sometimes we just have to go a little bit longer to really get through what we want to talk to you about and give it enough time for you to take away good information. So today did go a little bit longer than normal, but as I promised you at the very beginning, you were going to be highly entertained by Anne's great talent and skill. And again, just looking at it from those two perspectives, one is the audience and just the information that you're learning, but underneath that, the technical piece of how you put together these PowerPoints and what you can do to make them informative, interesting, fun, get your point across and not kill people. Which,
Yeah,
let's save lives. Anne and I are about saving lives. That's
yeah,
what we're about. And of course, that darling picture at the end was our own beautiful Anne Frost.
I
Was
know.
that tap dancing,
That
Anne,
was
or
ballet.
ballet? Ballet.
Yeah.
And you were adorable. I think, didn't you have that outfit on the last weekend? Oh no, that might have
Yeah,
been
I
something
did.
else.
Had to let it out like in the seams a little bit, but basically it stretches. So
Yeah.
I've forgotten. What are we talking about next week?
It is the third and final part of our series, The Art of Presentation and Delivery. And I actually can't remember. I was thinking logistics, but I'm sure that's not it. I have my
Well,
list.
I,
Go ahead.
I was thinking we were going to talk more about, yes, the presentation and delivery and things that we can do to be our most authentic selves when we're up in front of that classroom.
Yes.
So I want to
Thank
leave
you.
folks with a little something to think about.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
because this
Homework.
is what I do to be, or a couple of the things that I do to be my most authentic self. We talked about humor. I'm hoping you all can see this. Remember the little picture booths? We just go
Yes.
in.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
this is from 1994. These are my sons and my nephew jumped in this picture booth and they made these crazy faces. I laminated it. So it's my bookmark. You asked about this on
Oh,
bookshelf shelfies.
I
I've
do. I
actually
do
printed
ask
it.
about that.
So this is my bookmark and I typically have it somewhere in my materials. So if, it kind of lifts me up, it makes me smile, helps me
Mhm.
keep my sense of humor. So that's one thing that I do is try to find something that I can have around me when I'm training that reminds me to lighten up a little bit. The second thing, compression socks.
Really?
I have discovered compression socks because when you're standing up in front of a room for hours, as a trainer, you don't get to sit down that much.
No, you really don't. Yeah.
So you're on your feet, and my legs would just, you know, ache after
Oh,
an 8 hour session.
yeah.
Compression socks, ladies and gentlemen,
I
solves that
think I know
problem.
it's gonna be in my stocking this year at Christmas.
So that'll give you something to look forward to. Those are the kinds of things I'm hoping we talk about next
Maybe next
Thursday.
week you can actually show off your compression socks.
Oh, no,
No, we can't actually get the little leg up there and
no.
ta-da.
Well,
Okay, no, I'm just
yeah.
saying. You know.
So,
I do want to say thank you to Anne for today and putting together the presentation. And just so you know, Anne always does put together our presentations because she's a genius and we let her do that. We do want to say thank you to Kate Jung. Again, she is our behind the scenes person helping us get our Facebook page live, just our Facebook page up and organized and reaching more and more people and eventually hoping to have a nice big audience out there looking to broadcast even further. Please recommend us to your friends and to other people that you might work with that might benefit from this information. If you have any suggestions how we can do our job better, we're always open for that feedback, right, Ann?
right. We absolutely are. You don't, because you don't know until you know. You don't
That's
know
right. You
until
don't know what you
somebody,
don't know. Right. So
yeah,
we're always looking for the feedback.
yeah,
And I think that's it. Like and follow us here. We're just, as Kay likes to say, we're growing organically. So we do have an Instagram account, but nothing's happening out there just yet. It will eventually, we'll get there, but one thing at a time. I feel like this is all I can really handle right now on top of everything else that we do, our regular daytime jobs. So,
you'll
and
be
any parting words before we sign off from our cool advice on hot topics for stellar presentations?
just if there's anything that we talked about today, if you have a question about me or it triggers another question about a related topic, we would love to get your questions
Yeah.
and connect with you and help you work through um, some of your presentation training concerns. So please reach out to us. That would be fun. That would be a fun thing to do. We'd like to get to know you all better, know who's out in our room called the universe. So that would be a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
And it doesn't have to be PowerPoint related, right?
Right.
That's just one element.
Anything.
This could be anything about
Like What's the
presenting.
title of this book that's been behind you the whole time?
Yeah, what is that title? Oh, it's
Why Most PowerPoint Presentations Suck. So found on Amazon. So anyway, any questions, just give us a call
yeah,
via
absolutely.
Facebook.
All right. Well, everybody, have a great weekend, and we appreciate your time today, and we'll see you next week. Take
So
care.
long. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.